This is Inspire FM 105.1 FM. My name is Zaffar. I'll be your host today, presenting an hour-long show of Friday Night Live. As usual, we talk about the topical headlines that appear in mainstream media as well as social media. Today's no exception. Welcome to the show. As I said, today is the 26th of January, Friday, 15th of Rajab, according to Apple. And we have a packed show for you today, and hope you'll join me. If you want to take part in the discussions, any of the discussions, ask questions, comments, etc., our lines are always open on Friday Night Live. Number is our landline number is 1582481822, and our WhatsApp number is 07779481822. You can always WhatsApp me if you've got any questions, etc. We're going to talk about a number of things today. We're going to talk about the Gaza situation, what's the latest from there. We're going to talk about Pakistan elections. That's pertinent to our Pakistani community in Luton. And we're going to talk about a local issue to do with burials at the Vale Cemetery. That is what's on the agenda today. We're going to kick off today with proceedings at the International Court of Justice. If you remember, South Africa took a bold step and took Israel to ICJ and accused it of genocide. And basically the interim report or interim findings of that were released today. There has been some mixed views, and we've got experts on hand today to dissect the verdict and give us an opinion as to what that means and whether it brings any respite to the beleaguered people of Gaza. Can I welcome, first of all, to my program to Adam Shapiro. He's a regular contributor to this program, and he's a director of advocacy for Israel-Palestine at the Dawn, which is Democracy Now! In the Middle East. And also have with me, and I'm fortunate to have with me Dr. Anas Takriti. He's the CEO and founder of the Cordoba Foundation, and also Professor Kamal Hawash, who's a writer and a political commentator. Welcome all to the program, and thank you very much for joining me.
Thank
Can
you.
I first of all ask Adam? Adam, I mean, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago in terms of what to expect from the ICJ.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got this interim report. Seems very technical. What does it mean?
Well, there's a couple of, I think, messages to take home from this. The first is that the court found that the South African charges that Israel is committing genocide or is potentially committing genocide have standing. That basically the court found that on its face, there is a plausible case here that genocide is being committed by Israel against Palestinians. And this is not to be underestimated. Basically, Israel is now on trial officially for the charge of genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. This is, groundbreaking. It's historic, and is the first step on the path towards potential accountability. That path will take a long time because the court takes many, many years to decide these cases. So what we also heard today were the provisional measures that the court has enunciated. The measures that were announced by the court, some of them were exactly what South Africa asked for, including the immediate provision of humanitarian assistance into the population in Gaza. But some of the measures that the court ordered were not what South Africa asked for. At least, were different than what South Africa asked for. South Africa asked for a cessation order for Israel to cease its military activities in Gaza, which many people effectively are calling a ceasefire. The court did not use that provisional measure, as it had, I should note, in the case of Ukraine v. Russia, where the court did explicitly order Russian forces to stop their military activities. In this case, the court said that Israel must stop any genocidal acts, any acts that would be considered genocide under the convention, which include killing members of the group, in this case Palestinians in Gaza, causing any kind of physical or mental harm, and all the other pieces of the Genocide Convention. Now, there are those who are interpreting this, and the South African government is interpreting this as effectively the court is calling for a ceasefire, because there is no way that Israel could continue doing what it's doing and still comply with what this court has ordered, because the court has said that there's at least a chance, there's a plausible case that what Israel's already doing is genocide. However, you know, the imagination can certainly come up with ways that Israel will be able to argue and find allies to support that argument, that it could continue its military operations and still be in compliance with the orders of the court. I think what is the most important thing personally, and this is what we are messaging on, is that because the court has effectively said on its face there is a case that there is potentially genocide happening, that is, in the terms of the Genocide Convention, the risk of genocide. And therefore, the Genocide Convention is triggered now, because the Genocide Convention not only calls on states to stop genocide, it calls on states to prevent genocide. And at this point, we have a loud and clear warning from the court that there is a potential for genocide if it hasn't already happened, and it may have already happened, in Gaza, and all state parties to the Genocide Convention must take affirmative action to stop and prevent a genocide from happening.
I mean, it's widely reported, I guess, in the mainstream media as something short of what the expectation was. And actually, in layman terms, what does it mean for the people of Gaza? What would have meant if, for example, South Africa got exactly what it's asked for? What is the actual difference on the ground?
Well, look, the difference on the ground, I think, will, you know, anybody would say, is that Israel can and probably will ignore the provisions of any ruling that the court would have. And we've seen that with other states also. They just ignore the court. It's then up to the UN Security Council to articulate enforcement mechanisms, and that's still a possibility in this case. But the reality on the ground in Gaza is true. It's not going to change. And this is why, you know, as much as people have been putting their faith in this court case and bringing this forward, everybody has also recognized that it is not a substitute for the United States, for the United Kingdom, for other countries around the world to approve a ceasefire and to enforce a ceasefire and compel Israel to stop its attacks on Gaza immediately.
But it can. I think the reports also suggest that that there's a possibility that other states can, for example, apply sanctions, etc. Does this verdict or the report lend support to United Nations to be able to call for such action, or does it stop short of that?
Yeah, it certainly does open the door for various possibilities, including sanctions, including potentially tribunals. You know, there's a number of different pathways that this could go down. I think the most useful thing that we, and especially in civil society, as legal, you know, lawyers around the world, what they can start doing is using the tools that they have at their disposal through parliaments around the world to press governments to cease their support for the Israeli attacks on Gaza, whether that's through arms sales, military transfers, diplomatic support, etc. There's lots of options for pressing on this. This establishes the narrative that it's not anymore a question of whether or not genocide is being committed. There is a likelihood at this point that genocide is being committed, or at the very least, that there's a risk of genocide if it doesn't stop. And that changes the entire narrative, and it changes like how governments can act. Just to give you an idea, here in the United States, we've had Congress people basically dismissing the case as without merit. And the court clearly answered that today, that not only does it have merit, it's going forward to trial. So a lot of the arguments now don't hold water and against the case. And I think that this will we'll start to see some changes going on. Whether or not that amounts to immediate relief for the Palestinians in Gaza, I am unfortunately pessimistic. But I think this, for the longer term, is a major accomplishment by South African comrades.
Indeed. Dr. Anas, if I can bring you in. So basically, this is given some sort of tools, basically, for the legal fraternity to take some action. And I guess there are lots of people within the UK who have travelled and are participating and have participated in the actions in Gaza. Do you see pressure groups and legal groups at all pursuing legal actions now based on this judgment, or is this judgment just, it's for the higher authorities like the United Nations, etc., to sort of deal with?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here, and I'd like to sound my approval of everything that Adam said, but I'd like to sort of shift the focus a little bit, because I truly believe that today is a historic day, and historic for a number of reasons. And today, as well as last week when the South Africans presented their case, was virtually the very first time in living memory that we have had 8 hours of uninterrupted listing of Israeli crimes amounting, according to the South Africans, to genocide and to war crimes against perpetrators against the Palestinians. The whole world was sat in that theater watching with a bated breath, in the most professional of terms and the most brilliant of legal structures, a case being put forward to the world. That is something that the world has never ever seen before. Now, today's ruling is important for the reasons that Adam stipulated, but also I'd like to add that the fact that the court, the ICJ, accepted the case and accepted the plausibility of the claim being made by the South Africans is immensely important for activists like ourselves, because it removes the shackles and the threat of us being accused of being anti-Semites if we were to criticize Israel, or of us being using unacceptably controversial language if we were to use the accusation of genocide. I think what the ruling today does is that it emboldens those who are active, those who are writers, those who are on the streets, in newspaper columns and the such, to speak more freely, because now the entire world has put Israel on notice. Now, yes, the verdict might take years, but it doesn't matter. In all honesty, it doesn't matter. And the final verdict, I don't care, because now we have a document of around 80 pages from which we can produce articles, research papers, theater, plays, TV programs, films, children's stories. We have material that is now approved by the ICJ from which we can create a narrative, all of us, all around the world. Now, coming back to your initial question about the issue of ceasefire, I of course, I'm with everyone else who's frustrated because that didn't come forth. However, there is a technical point which I think is important. And that technical point is this: a ceasefire is called when there are two armies, such as Ukraine, Russia, such as the example that Adam gave. In the case of Gaza, there aren't two armies. We're talking about an act of genocide. For such, the ruling came to cease the acts that contribute towards, or that feed, or that prove the committance of genocide. And therefore, I personally believe, I'm not worried about this. I'm not worried about this. I agree entirely with Adam that things won't change for the people of Gaza today, tomorrow, or in a week's time. But the fact is that what we can do here in the UK, across the Western world, Europe and the United States, is that we can now mount serious pressure on our governments and on our decision makers, on our industry leaders, in order to stop supporting who is likely to be condemned for genocide. Now, this is serious, by the way, because now we have grounds to speak to Rishi Sunak, to speak to Joe Biden, and to say, listen, you might be complicit in a war crime being committed here. And this is not me speaking, because I know you are, but this is the ICJ speaking. This is the international community speaking. We're in a different ground today. What's happened today, seriously, if we exploit every facet of it, is a game changer. And I think it's a dynamic that adds to the tools that we're already using in order to support Palestine.
If I could also bring Professor Kamal in. Professor Kamal, now we've seen the arguments, basically we heard the argument of the ICJ. Do you think that the politicians like Joe Biden and Rishi Sunak will be very, very supportive of Israel, even recently in the House of Commons. Do you think that based on this verdict, they will begin to shift their rhetoric into a more balanced rhetoric towards the Palestinians?
If I can just go back a step, and regarding the issue of ceasefire or not, what we don't know is whether how the judges would have voted if the outcome was to include the ceasefire. And I have a feeling that was the compromise. I don't have any more details than that. But that had the ruling suggested being to have a ceasefire, would 15 or 13 or whatever number was on different issues have been so much in favor? It was a decision that I think they felt would show that there is a case to answer, and therefore they've got more time to investigate. But secondly, that for America, Britain, and other places, it isn't asking for a ceasefire, which actually are the policies that they have. The UK does not have a policy for a ceasefire, and it would have been put in and rightly so, in a difficult position to insist on that. So I think that was. I don't know whether we ever get to find out, but that's the question I've been asking myself since I heard or the recommendations to be implemented. But it does mean, and that is really a significant point, that the world leaders are on notice. I know that there were moves by the International Center for Justice for Palestine here. A letter went to Sunak and to Starmer, and I think to Cleverly, saying, be careful, guys, you are potentially aiding war crimes and so on. But they continued. They didn't stop. Now they might have to think twice. But in the UK, the question of arming Israel has got to stop, because even to them, with all the pressure they are under, they cannot guarantee that weapons will not be used on the Palestinians in Gaza. I recall a then foreign minister, Alistair Burt, being asked directly in Parliament when Israel was sniping, killing Palestinians at the fence during the marches of return, that Burt was asked this question: could any British weapons, particularly sniper rifles, have been used against the Palestinians? And he said that he couldn't say whether they were or not, because what the UK does is it has a risk assessment beforehand based on the country, and that means the risk assessment here says that Israel wouldn't use British rifles at the time on Palestinians. Well, at the very least, they should revisit that risk assessment and say, is there now a potential for Israel to use weapons from the UK in a potential genocide? They won't do that, but that's what they should be doing, even though, of course, they should just stop completely. But because they're doing it in a sort of a political way, that's one route they could take, is revise and publish the new risk assessment, and the outcome should be that Israel should not be sold one bullet.
Indeed. Adam, if, there has been some news recently, today and yesterday, regarding some initiatives, and I think ceasefire term has been used between the agencies, CIA and Qatar and Egypt. Do you think that will substitute something that might have come out of the ICJ ruling, and maybe that could come into play?
I think the pressure is now amped up considerably for the United States and the United Kingdom and other entities to start introducing ceasefire as a permanent ceasefire, not these so-called humanitarian pauses going forward. That said, so far Netanyahu is rejecting pretty much everything that comes out as an offer, and is also busy denigrating all the mediators who are trying to assist with, including getting hostages released. So there's a political side of this, separate from the legal side, separate from the diplomatic pressure, that we have to take into account. And unfortunately or fortunately, for Netanyahu, his political survival rests on him being able to continue prosecuting the war. That's clear. Israeli commentators are talking about that extensively. For the United States, Joe Biden is, as we all know, in an election year and facing a difficult position, because typically the knee-jerk reaction would be to not do anything to opposing Israel in any way whatsoever, regardless of what Israel is doing. But on the other hand, there are a lot of voters who are, especially from key constituencies in key states, that won't vote for Biden as long as he's continuing to endorse and support the genocide. So it's an interesting dilemma, I think, that the American president is in, and I think this decision will help push the administration to figure out a way out of that. And the way out at this point is clearly ceasefire. So I'm not surprised to hear that this is starting to happen with the CIA and with others, articulating it. Whether or not that actually, ends up becoming the demand that is enforced by the United States is a different story. I would just, to respond to Kamal for a second about the ceasefire and whether or not the judges would have actually ordered that. This was a little bit addressed, although not as fully as it should have been, which is that basically the court can't order a ceasefire on Hamas because Hamas is not a state. And therefore, one reason why South Africa didn't ask for a ceasefire explicitly is because the jurisdiction of the court doesn't cover a group like Hamas, for instance. And so South Africa was alleging genocide, and the party that is responsible for genocide in this case is Israel, and therefore the affirmative actions that should be taken are by the party that's doing the commissioning of the acts. And so, I don't think that the court would have even, I don't know that it was a compromise to order what it ordered. I think the decision to order to say that Israel should stop all acts that are consistent with the Genocide Convention allows the court to take the position that no further killing should occur, because there is already accepted the intent. If you read the other paragraphs of the ruling, that the intent has been established as plausible, but it gives enough wiggle room for the other states, who have to enforce this, to figure out ways to go about it diplomatically to put pressure. I think that's where the compromise has been.
Brilliant. And finally, we've only got a few more minutes. Dr. Anas, if I can put to you, there has to be an end game to this whole thing in Gaza. We talk about ceasefires, we talk about temporary cessations, etc. Where do you think this is going to end, and where do you hope it will end?
Well, imminently, I'm hoping for the ceasefire being negotiated between various actors in the region now, that will come to fruition, that it will be a long-term, at least 3 months ceasefire, if not permanent. That during that time, that aid will flood into Gaza, not just filter into or drip, drip, drip into Gaza, and that Gaza will be rehabilitated in terms of rebuilding the structure. But make no mistake, we're talking about one series, a tragic series of a long chain of history of crimes committed against the Palestinian people. Let's not forget that, unfortunately, people in the West Bank are really, really inhibited by what might come next at the hands of not only the Israelis, but their proxies in the West Bank. And therefore, the tragedy of Palestine will continue until the issue of occupation is addressed once and for all. Unless we talk about this, we'll forever be talking about, ceasefire, humanitarian,
is that any closer to happening then?
Listen, today I think we as activists, as supporters of Palestine, I think we are quite significantly closer to making Israel the liability that prevents our governments from giving it a carte blanche and unconditional support. I think that's a game changer and quite important.
Yeah, and finally, Professor Kamal, from a political point of view, Mahmoud Abbas is nowhere to be seen. Is he likely to have any role in a future setup post-Gaza?
I don't think we can personalize it in Abbas, but I think for the PA, the Palestinian Authority, to have a role would be really difficult. Just imagine how they would be received by the people of Gaza if they even tried to enter. A couple of attempts happened a few years ago for people to go in from the PN. They didn't get very far, so I don't think so. But the first thing, I know there's a lot of discussion about the day after, but for now, my focus is on how to stop Palestinians being killed. And
Indeed.
I agree with what Adam said about what could have been possible, but really we must all work really, really hard to ensure that our government here can see that actually Israel will never have more security because of what it's doing. It will have less security, and its place in the Middle East is not something that will be entrenched through what it's doing at the moment against the Palestinians.
Professor Kamal, Dr. Anas, Adam Shapiro, thank you very much for joining me today. I have run out of time. Listeners, we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned.
Assalamu alaikum. In Luton and its surrounding areas, it is now time for Salat al-Isha.
लुटन और इसके मज़ाफ़ात में नमाज इशा का वक्त हुआ चाहता है.
This azan has been sponsored by Ideal Properties. Contact us on 01582 721110 or log on to www.idealpropertiesltd.co.uk.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة والدرجة الرفيعة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
Would you like to sponsor the Azan? If so, give us a call on 01582 481810 or email us on info@inspirefm.org.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6:30.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. You're listening to Friday Night Live. This is Zaffar Iqbal, and you're listening to Inspire FM 105.1 FM. Before the break, we were listening to views from eminent scholars, eminent scholars, people who are highly qualified. They were dissecting the ICJ ruling on the genocide case that South Africa brought against Israel at the International Court of Justice. And the summary, as far as I could understand it, was that there are technicalities in this particular case. However, Israel does stand accused of genocide, and there is evidence that genocide is happening or potentially happening, and there are consequences for people and governments who continue to support and supply arms to Israel, like the UK and America. So that was what we discussed there before the break. We're going to move on now to another topic of discussion, very important topic indeed. If you, like me, are follower of the events in Pakistan, if you didn't know that Pakistan was supposed to have elections back in November time, according to the constitution. But hey, in Pakistan, who cares about the constitution? The elections are scheduled because the all-powerful electoral commission has decided that they're going to happen on the 8th of February, and we're still not sure whether they're going to happen on the 8th of February. However, a date has been set, and we're due to hear from a colleague, a journalist from Pakistan, who's going to be with us shortly. Hopefully we can get through to him, because Pakistan is a little bit difficult to get hold of this time of the day or night, as it is there. It's about midnight or close to 1 o'clock there in Pakistan. So we are hoping to speak to Ahmed Ahmed is a journalist and lawyer who can give us an up-to-date picture on the preparations for elections and whether they're going to actually happen on the 8th of February or not. Okay, well, while we wait for Ahmed to join me, again, I'll give you a little bit of border from what I know, at least anyway. And if you disagree with anything I say, you're welcome to call me on 01582481822 or message me 07779481822 on WhatsApp. If you happen to be a supporter of the political parties who you think are perhaps not getting a fair shot at elections, or if you happen to be sitting smug, right, thinking, yeah, the election's going to be handed to me on a plate by generals, do please share your thoughts with me, what your views are, etc. 01582481822 07779481822 for any WhatsApp messages that you want to send to me. So basically, as far as I know, well, this is my understanding, this is my views based on some, I guess, my research, etc. So the elections are scheduled to happen on the 8th of February. Political parties have been campaigning. The PPP has been widely reported as campaigning. So Bilal is been on the campaign trail and has been doing lots of road shows, basically campaigning for elections to be held. Noon League have had some, but they seem to be muted. They don't appear to be very bothered from what I gather. And PPP have had lots of things slapped on them. For example, they've been stopped from actually standing in for elections as a party. They have to stand as independents, thanks to the ECB. Well, Pakistan Election Commission, ECP, basically, right? So that's where we are. So they are campaigning where they can, but they risk getting shot or arrested or put in prison, right, if they do. However, Imran Khan has told them that this is their day, right? They're going to have to come out in large numbers, and all the polls are suggesting that he's still very much in the lead. He's still very much the popular leader, and PTI is one of the more popular sort of parties in Pakistan at the moment. So hopefully we'll have Amr connected and we can speak to him about that. Tell me, guys, admin, producers, we're going to get Amr on the line or not? Okay, well, that's being sorted out. The other thing that we wanted to talk about today really was a local initiative, a local story. We were hoping to speak to Councillor Javed Hussain about the burial situation. He's there on cue. He's in the studio, coming nice and early. So maybe I can engage him. Do you delve or do you engage in Pakistani politics at all?
I absolutely avoid it as much as I can.
Oh, you avoid it.
Unfortunately, I can't avoid it, but I avoid the Pakistani politics
You're
because
right.
it makes my heart bleed. Yeah, when I look at what we're doing, what the Pakistani politicians are
Well,
doing to our country.
Well, that's an opinion. That's an opinion already.
No, but I have my opinion. I just don't air it. But everybody has an opinion on everything. You just I think the question was, do I get involved in it? And the answer is absolutely not.
Well, I don't get involved in it, but I have my opinions. Some people actually sort of, perhaps castigate me for my opinions, and I normally have a banter here with Abdul Akbar, right? If you've been listening to my programs about the different sort of political parties in Pakistan, obviously I have a stance, and like everybody else, Abdul Akbar has a different stance than me, so I have a bit of a banter. But having said that, it's very tragic the way the things are unfolding there in Pakistan, and the way the elections are being sort of arranged or set up, so to speak, by powers that be. Anyway, we'll move on from that story. If you've got actually any views that you want to share with me, then please do. I think there's somebody who's trying to send me a message on WhatsApp. Guys, come and show me how to use this WhatsApp from here. The mouse isn't actually sort of leading to the right place. I do have some commentary. Somebody called Arman is desperately trying to get his messages across. I want to read his messages. Let me know, please. So we will actually sort of talk about the Pakistani elections in between, and we will hear people's comments about what's happening in Pakistan. But we'll move on to the next story, basically, which is Amr has joined. Excuse me a second. Yeah, we need to get this story. Assalamu alaikum, Amr. Are you?
Wa alaikum salam.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I had to turn the mic off, the camera off, because I can't hear with my phone otherwise. So I'm just using the mic. But I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, that's good. It's always difficult to get connection in Pakistan, and I always insist on having somebody in Pakistan, right? So apologies for that.
Not at all.
So elections, are they going to happen on the 8th or not?
Well, that's the big mystery. Will we have elections, and when will we have them? I mean, they're due to schedule them, but whether we have them or not is anyone's guess. I think it depends on what's going on globally.
Oh, okay, right. So they're likely to happen. Okay, basically that's what you're saying. In terms of the setup, can you describe to me whether these elections can be or will be seen to be fair and fair for everyone?
Free and fair. Well,
free and fair.
Well, I mean, yeah, the normal procedure is to have international monitors, people who oversee what's going on at polling stations and booths, and they comment upon the fairness of the election. Pakistan is notorious for having unfair elections. Ballot boxes going missing or being replaced, and all those other kind of shenanigans. We'll have to wait and see how the elections are conducted and whether the vigilators or the monitors are prepared to be objective and report fairly and freely about what's going on.
I believe there's already, well, at least anyway, people who are following the headlines, there's already some parties being favored over others. And there's also question marks about the Electoral Commission, its standing, neutral or not, and also the interim setup being interim and being neutral. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yes. I mean, well, you can see what's going on. That's been going on in Pakistan for the last few years, and this, we now have a potential prime minister in waiting, who's come back from the UK, who is being or has been absolved of all his past misdemeanors, and is likely to stand election along with other members of his family. I mean, quite frankly, in any real world, it's shocking what is going on. But the fact of it is, in Pakistani and Eastern politics, it seems to be the way, and people seem to accept these kind of shenanigans. So we'll have to wait and see.
Well, is that going to be the case this time? Because I know these shenanigans have gone on for many years, and there has been electioneering or rigging, etc., of elections previously. But there was hope that this time might be different. And do you think this time is worse or better than previous occasions?
Well, I don't want to be the harbinger of doom and gloom, but I mean, given what we've seen of the political system in the last few years, we've seen a prime minister being deposed by his own ministers and opposition. That person and ending up in custody for very spurious allegations. And was he tried properly? Was he tried fairly? I think there's big question marks over all of those things. In light of all of that, I'm not sure why anybody would think that. I would hope for the best, but expect the worst. Because why would you think that they're going to have free and fair elections, given what's gone on in the last few years, and given the players are on the board? I mean, I'm sorry to sound so disillusioned, but it really is a sorry state.
But is it any worse than it has been previously? Because I mean, there's allegations by Noon League in 2018 of these shenanigans, and I think previously in 2013 similar sort of things. But to me, at least anyway, I wasn't an election observer then. Wasn't particularly interested in Pakistani politics, right? But now, to me at least anyway, it seems quite obvious, right, that there is lots of shenanigans happening, and they seem to be a lot worse than they were previously.
I'd have to agree with you. I mean, again, I wish I had something positive to say. I don't want to, I want the best for Pakistan, of course, and the people of Pakistan. But if you've got the leaders and politicians that we have, then there's only one conclusion. People, their supporters of either party may be happy. Their people will get in. When they get in, what they will do is very, very questionable.
Right. Okay. But do you think the polls seems to suggest that Imran Khan might, despite the disadvantages he's had, including the fact that his people can't fight this election on a party ticket, they have to fight as independents. Do you think he it's going to be a different situation this time? I think I might have lost him. All right. Okay. Ahmad, I have got your message. This is Ahmad's message. The sad truth is that our country, our own military, is doing what Pakistan's enemies couldn't do. That's a message from Ahmad. He obviously is a PTI supporter, but there you go. He's sharing with me an article from another newspaper.
Sorry, I got disconnected. I'm back.
Okay. All right. What I was saying basically is the situation any different now that one party, the PTI, Imran Khan's party, has, according to polls at least anyway, overwhelming support?
Yes, I mean, I think it's. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I think there is. That's a fair point to make. There is something positive to say that there is. If people view PTI and Imran Khan as a positive force for change in the country, which whether you like him as a politician or not, or value him as a politician, he is a catalyst for change. There's no doubt about that. And so therefore that is at least a positive thing. And I think from what I can gauge, people in Pakistan, he has a massive groundswell of support. If it's a free and fair election, he may well get elected, and many members of his party may well get elected. That is something positive. There is a mood of change in Pakistan, and hopefully that can be respected.
Indeed. All right. I mean, I'm going to have to move on. I've got another story to
my pleasure.
Thank you very much for your comments. I do appreciate you're in Pakistan and you can't say things as freely as perhaps you could be able to say here. But
yeah, I
do appreciate that what you shared with me today. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Right. Okay. Local story. The cemetery, the Vale Cemetery, is filling up quite quickly, and the local council, with its planning hat on, have been doing some thinking and head scratching. And I'm joined by Councillor. I'm joined by. Sorry, apologies. I'm joined by Councillor Javed Hussain, who's the deputy leader, an executive member for highways, sustainable support, right, which includes responsibility for the cemetery and crematorium. He's part of the highways. I didn't know he's part of the highways. How could he be part of the highways?
So I won't touch on that. So for my sins, I've got highways, I've got fleet, I've got PTU, I've got parking enforcement, I've got cemeteries, crematorium, I've got gypsy travellers, and I also sit on England's economic heartland, and I'm also got the bus service improvement.
Wow.
So I've got a number of key areas, strategic.
You're a busy man. You're a busy man.
Absolutely, and I've also got strategic planning. But yeah, I'll have to come back another day if you want to go through the whole. There's a whole catalogue, and we won't, because today I know we're here to talk about a thing that's very close to our hearts. We've all got to die.
About it. What's the issue? What's the big?
No, the issue is it's ready. So last night we've had one session this week, Wednesday, for a drop-in session. Primarily at the moment we've been targeting funeral directors to get them on board and actually tell them where this new Vale is and how. So we were calling it the new Vale because there's going to be a new cemetery extension. Because it's on greenbelt land, there's certain regulations that come, which are not us, which are national. We've got planning permission for it, all done. We're actually got people on site getting the new cemetery, because I think... So the reason I've come in is to allay fears, because people go up there. We've had a lot of deaths recently, people have lost loved ones, friend, near and dearest. And to say that, look, we are very close to opening the new cemetery. We hope to be able to use it in May.
Okay, that's soon.
Yeah, as soon as... No, we've been in the planning process for a long while. Even in the background, a lot of work has gone, but...
Are you able to say where it is?
Absolutely. No. So I'm going to say a lot more than that. So it's... As you come into Butterfield Road and you turn right into the cemetery, you carry on that same road, and on the left-hand side, we've bought a big field. Now, that field's got capacity for circa 7,000 graves. Wow. Based on, what's the best way to say it? Based on 500 deceased bodies a year, because obviously it's a cemetery for all our communities. We think it'll give 15 or 16 year capacity. Okay. And what we're to try and keep the capacity maximized, we're not proposing to build any new car park there. You will use the existing car park, and right at the back, where the hedges are. Yes. We are going to create an opening there for people to park there and literally just walk across. The only people because Butterfield Road is it's a narrow road. What will happen is the funeral directors will go there. If you need to drop somebody who's got mobility issues, you can drop them. But you would have to.
That's not going to happen. People are going to be parking right on the graves, and they'll be parking on all sorts of different places, right?
So okay. So that was a question I was asked last. No, and that's a pertinent question, and that's why I'm here. So if we find that that's the case.
Well, I go there regularly, right? Because my mum is buried there, and people are parking on the roundabout. Right, they've got the big 4x4s, right, and they're parked right on the roundabout itself, and the central verge, right, apart from the car park, which is 200 yards away, right. So I can't see them behaving any differently.
So Zaffar, you're absolutely... No, I'm going to answer that, because like I said, parking, highways is all me, sustainable transport, sustainable development is all me. And one of the things, and if it comes down to it, if there's going to be abuse, what you haven't got is, at the moment, you've got yellow lines. So there's a distinct difference. A yellow line has to be enforced by a park enforcement officer turning up. That's given. I've read the differences with the red lines. You can then do it by camera. If on Butterfield Road, we're going to get that abuse, then there is an option for us to consult and put in a red route. Now, yes, you will get traffic, but I always say one thing, yeah. You know what they say: if you don't do the crime, if you don't want to pay the fine, don't do the crime. Okay. It's simple as that. And you're right. It's sad that we got to have, because you're noticing it, and let me tell you, the general public notices, and they're not happy with the few people who think that they can do what they like, because all it is, the car park's right next to it. Wouldn't you not admit to it? Yeah. No, but because I'm conscious of the time, so what's going to happen is one of the things it's greenbelt land, so we're going to have a standard size headstone. So this new cemetery, none of this one headstone is like a very wide, one small. We're going to try and have a uniform looking cemetery. A space of respect, your last resting place. We're also going to allow you to have the curb set, but they're going to be single layer. But in the middle bit of it, where you had marble, what the marble was doing, because it's clay up there, what it was doing is the person next door, buried next door, for a better word, the water from that marble was then going in flooding somebody else's grave, which is totally on there. So what we're saying is this time around, because of this, now we're putting in drainage, but we don't know how good the drainage will be, and especially when we get a heavy rain season, because we know climate change, the weather's unpredictable. So you'll be allowed to put flowers on that grave. You'll be able to, but the flowers can't go above the headstone.
No trees.
No trees. So no trees. That's no trees. So you can put flowers in as long as it all stays below the headstone. So we get that sort of bird's eye view because it's green belt. So we retain. Now, one of the questions people could ask me is, Javed, why have you bought green belt land? And I'll tell you simply, green belt land, as you know, housing is a big issue, and land in Luton is. If it wasn't green belt, then the developers would have bought it up, or we would have had to pay 5 times, 6 times the amount of money. But the green belt rules allow you to have a cemetery because you still retain the openness. Does that make sense? I think that's the bit I wanted to get over to your audience, is that we didn't go and purchase it lightly. We went through it. We purchased what we think is 15, 16 years. We would have purchased a bigger field but this was. We also were very lucky that we were able to purchase this land off the Crown Estate. As soon as we purchased it, the Crown Estate stopped selling land off. Okay. And so the community got lucky. I'd say it's the community we got lucky. The community got lucky that we were able to get to purchase a graveyard, a place for a graveyard.
But the field on the other side where the windmill is, effectively, that's farmland. That's Hertfordshire, isn't it? That's not.
No. So this bit is. So that's a good question. This bit is still Luton. Okay. There's fields next door, I guess the question will be for the community, because I hear that the community a number of times we should have our own Muslim burial ground. So this one is clearly for all communities, because council does, when we buy purchase land, we represent all communities. Now, this purchase gives us 15 years or so. Now, if the community were minded to do their own, that's their choice. But we as a council, after 10 years, we will have to make a decision. We will have to purchase some next land, and the next graveyard extension is going to be in Hertfordshire or Bedfordshire. So your point is correct. And that all depends. And then the planning authority will be Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire. So it won't be us. At the moment, we were the planning authority. We were able to, do the due diligence, and there were objections. Let me tell you one thing. There were a lot of objections for the residents on Butterfield, but at the same time, there's only 8 houses. They didn't want the graveyard there, but if you don't want it, who wants it? We need it. It's not like it's something that we do for the community. So I think going forward, we'll have to make that decision. As you know, we give 99 or 125-year lease. I personally hope that in my lifetime, I'm not going to have to make a decision of ripping somebody else's old grave and reusing it. That's a decision you and I, Zaf, won't have to, and somebody else can make that in the future, or whatever happens. But at the moment, we've got the land, we've got the planning permission, we've got contractors on site starting up to lay out, and also we've so he's got his own little service road for the hearse. Even though off the main road there's a service road that goes into it, at least small roads for the hearse. And we've got the rules and regulation now. The reason why I think it's very important people need to understand is this time around is different. As I'm leading on it, I'll be taking this policy to executive. Now, once the policy is taken to executive and signed off, then those rules can't be changed. So you can't say, I'm going to ring up this council and say, oh yeah, by the way, allow me to do this. No, the rules will be applied uniformly across all communities.
What are the rules then?
So like I said, no trees.
Okay, no trees.
No trees. single curb sets, whether they be wooden or marble or single. But in the middle part of there, you're still allowed to have the concrete chambers or wooden chambers underneath. So it's not much. It's more about trying to make it uniformal and more respectable, a bit like the garden, a piece of garden in London, so that we have one standard looking one where we have on some of the ones where people had benches and chairs, we won't be allowing. We will provide you a chair to loan to read the Quran, Bible, whatever. We will loan it to you and you will return it to us, but you won't have them scattered all over the place like we have now. I don't know, you go up there regularly.
Yeah.
It doesn't look tidy, it doesn't look respectful. We want to make sure that on the new
it doesn't look manicured, to be honest, right? It needs, the grass is grown sometimes, and when the grass is cut as well, right, the leftover of the grass is all over the place and it covers the grave. So anyway, I have run out of time. I'm sorry. You were going to answer that question, but quickly, if you want to.
No, so quickly I'll answer that. And one of the options was from the officers, which we didn't, the community like. They wanted us to just have a headstone so they could run over a machine and make it easier, because the problem is it has to be done by hand because of the concrete.
Right. I've got to go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Listeners, this is the end of the show today. Jazakallah. Thank you. Stay tuned for the next program, and I will see you, inshallah, next week. Assalamu alaikum.